Hmm. Hey guys, you know what? I'm tired. I don't want to do a review today. I don't want to phone it in. I don't want to give you another half-baked crap type of little my little 2 cents about a novel that tons of people have read before already, that everybody that I'm not saying anything new. No, just kidding. Most of that. I mean, some of it's I guess, holds true in some degree. I mean, I do have my doubts about the quality of my reviews, and I really but that is kind of the lingering type of, I guess, nihilism. I guess of me kind of not wanting to do a lot of things. It's like, I don't come on. I don't need to practice an instrument every single day. I mean, it's like I'm never gonna be, I don't know, like I'm never gonna be Glenn Gould on the piano. So why even bother? I think you're setting the bar too high. I know I am. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I gotta keep feeding the content cow. Like I gotta keep. It's not like I have, but at the same time, it's not like I have. I think I've said this before, but it's not like I have overlords looking over me, being like, "Oh, you have to, create X, Y, and Z content. You have to create 10-minute videos once or twice a week or something." But at the same time, I feel like to the small little community that curated, like there's a certain amount of people out there that are kind of looking forward to that. So I still want to make sure that they are satisfied in some way if they're following. Thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make it. I'm trying to make these reviews a little bit less kind of like lackadaisical, or well, not more like not lackadaisical, but like a little less half baked, or kind of like, oh, this is blah, blah. I'm trying to think of something unique to draw from it, and since I'm not like a person who loves format. I'm not like a person that's good at routine, so it's like I'll like be really good at doing something for like certain amounts of time, like getting up at a certain time, for example, and like but that's only if there's like this incentive, and like I have to be drawn, or it has to be like the right motivation in my life. So, but with that being said, maybe this book will, I think, the fact that I think once I go into it a little bit, like reviewing the book, or like once I get talking about it on the ball rolling, with the spirit of improv, I guess, you kind of get a little bit energized by what you're talking about, and you become a little bit more engaged. And yeah, and even though I'm a little tired right now and I'm not at my best, but then again, I'm probably never at my best, really. I mean, there's probably like only a few days of the week, or a couple days at most, or a few hours, I guess, each day where you kind of feel at your best. So I think that's kind of like a mythical type of fairy tale type of standard I'm setting for myself. And yeah, so I hope that I can kind of get into the trying to find the right metaphor, get into the grind, not the grind, but like the flow state, I guess, of like enjoying the review, and like actually, because I try not to script these too much. I mean, I'll have like some pointers and stuff that I'll like refer to. So every time I look here, it's like I'm probably just looking at audio, or for the most part, or some notes that I scribbled down. But I try not to script it too much. Part of it's admittedly is just my own laziness, really. I mean, it's like I'm not really. I'm not going to try to act like, oh, but I'm just such a perfectionist that I never write anything or whatever, which might be slightly true as well. But so yeah, today is The Sailor That Fell from Grace by Yukio Mishima. This is my foray into his writing. He is a Japanese author who was quite a character, and he wrote this, I think, in the early 60s, I believe. And yeah, it's a very unique book. Not too long. It's like maybe like standard novel length, a few days. Though, I guess, like the book world, that doesn't really matter too much. But at the same time, yeah, it's basically about a young man who, he's a youth, I think, like early teens, I think. And he's like trying to, like his mother doesn't have a father, and he basically, it's like kind of a single mother thing going on. And she's like dreaming of, or he's dreaming of her finding like of some like a reputable man to kind of like take her hand in marriage. And they are at this point it's like Japanese, I guess, like at this point it's long after the war, I guess, is when this is set. So it's like kind of like there's this sailor, the titular sailor, who comes into the picture, and he comes in, and he's basically kind of like far from a far cry of what he used to be. Like he's kind of like this, he's not in his prime, and he kind of talks about, he tells all these old sailor stories, and like him seafaring ships and all that, going around in the Pacific Ocean, and like he's like kind of hearkening to the past a lot. Like he doesn't actually ever like he doesn't really, he's kind of dwelling and brooding in the past. He's not actually searching forward. So basically this guy falls in love with the young narrator. Well, he's not the narrator, but the young boy, the young boy's mother, and they basically kind of have, like a fond type of relationship, but he's like very kind of like skeptical of it, because he also is a part of a kind of very radical type of, I don't want to say hyper masculine, but kind of, I got that vibe a little bit. Like he's into this like kind of dissident group of young boys who are like, they all challenge one another. So, like trying to get over their fear, and it's like all this rite of passage type of stuff that, as most young boys, I assume, go through in some level one another, but they really take it to the extreme. Like there's like literally a part in this that's like, I was like had trouble reading because it was so graphic. He's describing like them skinning a cat as kind of one of the rite of passages to get into this, to get kind of accepted into this kind of like really kind of almost like militaristic. And there's like kind of like this other young boy that's like maybe a little bit older than the main character, who is kind of like what he aspires to be. So with that is kind of like juxtaposed as parallels, kind of running that narrative, while the sailor, who's like, the reason it's kind of he falls from grace is that because he's dwelling in the past, and he doesn't live up to, he's such this sharp contrast from what this young man has been experiencing, like this like hyper, like super radical type masculinity of these like of this organization. And he basically has they all kind of like, the boys all kind of like group up together to kind of to like meet in the, I think like they want to take him on like a walk around the coast, and I think like he's going to tell them old sailor stories, and there's like this old, I think this cave that they want to take him to, secluded area, basically so they can kind of give him like a proper death, I think, because like kind of drinking himself into a bit of a wistful type of sleep, and he's he's just kind of bringing up old tales and fondly recollecting of the past. And I think I could be wrong, but it ends on kind of like an ambiguous note where he's like, at once, like for once the sailor's actually happy as he was telling all these stories, and like the rest of them were they were kind of giving him they were like, let's give him a proper death, like let's like they're all pitying him. So I guess that's the themes drawn from that. And should have said spoiler, because that's kind of I kind of gave away the whole entire ending, but probably give that any annotations later. But yeah, it's like the whole entire theme is that this the contrast between the youths that are like very potent, very strong, like very just no nonsense, like grappling with their senses, moving forward, blazoning into the future. And then you have kind of this man who's like like past his prime, and he's kind of like pathetic in a way, or they take pity on him, and he's like kind of like an old dog, really, like he's kind of, and you have all that kind of like clashing against one another, kind of that generation gap. So yeah, it was really great. And the reason I said that Yukio Mishima was quite a character was because he was to my knowledge, he was a Japanese nationalist, and he had a very specific vision for Japan, and he wanted to go back to like pre-colonial days, not pre-colonial, but pre-imperial Imperial Japan. Like he wanted to go back to that war machine of like Japan as this mammoth, like like just like eating up all the land and warring with China, and the whole Manchurian thing, of which I only know because there's this excellent book by Ira Chang I'd like to review soon, but it's like it's kind of like a little bit different from the literature that I've been reviewing, but it's very important nonetheless. It's called The Rape of Nanking, and it talks about kind of one of the many tragedies that happened under the like that Imperial Japan during World War II. Like all these people, young men incurred to kind of just like do anything, like rape, pillage, and just burn everything. It's just like every imaginable, permutation of like just violence against people. Like just, it gets pretty graphic, but slashing open the, pregnant woman, and kind of like what happened in Ronba too. It's just like this, just decimating the whole entire city of Nanking, and it's just, it's very, just awful. The way they just treated people, like when you bring that anonymity level to the point where it's like they're less than human. And that's kind of what happens. So I don't know. That's why it's hard for me to kind of reconcile this with Yukio Mishima, because he's such a beautiful writer, and I'm certainly going to read more of him, but I will keep that kind of in line. It's not like he, was necessarily, I don't know what version of Imperial Japan he was looking for. I'm going to have to do more research on that, but he, ultimately, this is, probably the most famous thing about him, is that he committed seppuku, or seppuku, I think. He, after a failed coup, when he was like trying to get, he was like making one last kind of, like speech, in fact, some of it's on footage. I think I saw some of it. You can actually see him like, very passionate. And he's this very like martial, if you see pictures of him, he was like, a martial artist too, and he was like very lean, like Bruce Lee type physique, and he was just like very, just ready to just, rile up Japan and get him to follow him, and he's like, just join me so we can have this new, like, this very fun, not fundamental, but nationalist type of fascist, probably, yeah, just very hyper, fascist Japan, just like, this is the way to go, and they didn't follow him, and he was like, well, I'm just gonna, he truly believed, you couldn't argue with the fact that he truly believed in what he was saying too, despite kind of how, on the outset of how, looking in, like, how twisted a lot of it seems. So I guess it comes from a place of understanding. And yeah, so that is it for today. I hope I kept that kind of short, and yeah, thank you for watching.